with you, SECU, one of our podcasts, and I've got two great ones today. Kirk McNair, 24 Bama 247, legendary journalist in Alabama, and if you like reading Bama magazine, Inside the Auburn Tigers, and other magazines over the years, this is the originator. And on top of him, Buddy Martin, great sports writer, GatorbaitMedia.com. These are two of the best. Again, I made a reference earlier. How'd you like to say, hey, I want to learn how to paint, and your teacher is Michelangelo or Rembrandt? Well, you got two of the absolute best here in Kirk McNair and Buddy Martin. And no matter what you're a fan of, what school in the SEC or college football, these are two of the best. They're also first-class gentlemen. They love their schools that they cover, but they have friends at all the other schools, and they know the stories. They know why, and they make us love the games, because reading about the games, it's evergreen content. You can go back and read about an Alabama game or a Florida game or a Georgia game from 40 years ago or 70 years ago because of them. Guys, let's get started, and I'll start with Kirk. A lot has changed in what we see, what we call journalism today. I referenced my typing teacher, Brother John Michael. God help you if you looked at the keys more than twice. You didn't do it again. But indenting 5 spaces to the right, making sure every word is spelled right, the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed. Do we still have that kind of passion for journalism? Kirk, you first, and then Buddy, and we'll talk about why y'all are so successful still to this day and keep getting better.
Well, thanks for having me, Rob, and good to see you, buddy. It's been a long time. I would say that
last time I saw you, when was that? At a press box?
Some press box, I'm sure. I started thinking about this when you approached me, Rob, and in fact, I wrote a series this past week about some of the things. Early newspapers were the deal. That was the thing, newspapers. We had the Skywriters, which is overtaken by SEC Media Days. Recruiting was hardly covered. But what was done was, and the writing approach has changed. I mean, the game story was the big deal early on. Later, more analysis and columns and that sort of thing, which was fine. And I would say what has changed is, in addition to the technology, we've gone almost completely to what matters most, the internet, our internet sites, our websites. And also, now, of course, I'm much older, but I think overall the journalists are much younger than they were back in what I consider olden times. And I think there's a rush that, whereas, it used to be sort of, get it first if you can, but get it right. That was the main thing. And now it seems to be whatever you've heard, whatever you think, whatever you make up or whatever, hit send and be out there. And so I'd say I don't trust what I see as much as I did back in the Jack Harston, Benny Marshall. You can go on and on and on about the great
Al Fantu, all that bunch. Yeah, I knew them all well. Yeah.
Yep. So it was a different time, and it's a different time now, and we're probably still negotiating it a little bit, negotiating these terrible waters, which is sometimes terrible, but also great advantage. There's no space limitation.
Yeah, Buddy. And I get to write a column now for Buddy for the show, for our website and all. And how about that as a coach? I mean, he's breaking it down, watching tape, with somebody. I'm all ears. And Buddy, kind of take off on what Kirk just said. I agree with
you. Phone. Yeah. Hello, how are you? We're doing good. We're hanging in there. Kirk, football. Come on and join us. We'll talk some football, SEC today. Hey, Kirk, it's great to see you and great to be on with you. And I'm flashing back like crazy because I want to know people know that in Alabama that Paul Feinbaum did not invent journalism. All right. Paul's a friend of mine. I know his good points and his bad points. Congratulations on his success. But yeah, it's funny. This is really funny because I went through what you did, Kirk, and the death of the newspapers as we're seeing them die right before our eyes right now. We all had to reinvent ourselves, which I've done about 9 times. How many times do you do that? Well, I don't know. I keep going. And now I've been really studying, working on a book about the SEC Skyriders. I was on the first 2 in 1966, 67, 68, actually. I'm trying to recall all the 21 people who were on that plane, Jack Harston being one of those, and also realizing that there are only 4 people alive who were on that plane. So, yeah, it's a lot of sports writers and newspapers have died. A lot of people don't have any clue how the newspapers serve the communities. Because when we grew up reading the local columnists to find out what was going on in the school we followed. Rob was in Memphis or wherever, he reading Commercial Appeal and what have you. Probably even read my friend Buddy Page when he worked there. So that barometer we always had, Kirk, that the readers always had, the most trusted person in the community when it came to sports and college football was the local columnist. I mean, I can name you George Smith, Madison, right on down the line, all of it. He was on that first flight. So it's kind of like, okay, either reinvent yourself or get out of the game. So I chose to hang around, probably as I was told this morning on the show, way too long. I've been hanging around too long, whatever. So, I mean, it is what it is. I enjoy it. As long as I enjoy it, I'm going to continue to do it. If you don't like it, you can turn it off. But let's just say this. It's a sacred trust still. It's changed, that we've changed. We're trying to figure out how to best serve our readers/viewers. And this is kudos to Rob, he's got an old soul. He loves the stories about back in the day. He loves sports writers, as Rob often says. They make the best guests because they can explain to you, put it in context better than anybody. So I'm just glad to see another fellow journalist who's not 35, out there someplace. And I look forward to getting to know you and sharing some stories with you. And as we sit here and talk, I guess I'm breaking news. I hope it's okay, Rob, to say this. I just got off the phone last night before last, with the guy who has been my agent, who hadn't had much work lately. We have just agreed to look into and work on a new book about the SEC growing up like it did, and a biographical piece called A Sports Writer's Life in Black and White. And it's not so much about me as it's about what was around me, the people I got to know. And Kirk, this, and the relationships that you had and you formed, Rob, and you, Kirk, have formed over these years in Alabama. These stories die. I mean, look, we lost Nick Saban, whatever, the GOAT, whatever. I mean, someone's got to be here to tell the story. So I guess that'd be us right now, Kirk.
Yeah.
Kirk, it's hard, though. Somebody said I have another one in me the other day. I said, well, it's going to stay there because I've written a few, and it's hard work.
It is really hard work. And if you can see behind me, my wife, I don't know, she put these up there at the top. That's quite a bit of my life right there in those books. And, a few sold good and a few didn't. But the one I'm most proud of is the Spurrier book, his official autobiography. It was a joy to do that book. But listen, you have many good stories to tell, Kirk, and I'm glad you're still telling them. Talk about Alabama, what's going to happen there, for instance.
Well, of course, that's one of the big stories of the year. In a year of big stories, anytime you have a changing of the guard, it's a story. And when you have one at the level that Alabama has this year with Nick Saban, unquestionably one of the greatest of all time, maybe the greatest, considering his record, retiring, and Alabama within 49 hours hiring the National Coach of the Year, Kalen DeBoer, from Washington. And the first thing most people said was, well, he's never recruited in the South. And of course, I think his recruiting right now is second in the nation.
Yeah.
And then now they're saying, well, he's never competed in the South or in the Southeastern Conference, which is true, of course. And it's a tough league, made tougher this year with realignment. Alabama adding two very good teams. The Southeastern Conference adding two very good teams, which everybody gets to play. And that's all Florida needed was another tougher game this year. That's a murderous schedule. That's one of the big stories of the year is what in the world was everyone thinking to give Florida that schedule. But I've got a lot of faith in Billy Napier. I know him casually.
Oh, yeah. Tell us about his experience. He coached at Alabama. What was your take on him?
My take on him was he was a bright young coach then, and then he went and proved he was a good coach as he grew up in his first head coaching job. And I thought he was a good hire for Florida, and I think he will be. But he was not to be critical of Dan Mullen, but I don't think Dan Mullen's recruiting was up to snuff for what a new coach coming in needed to have.
No doubt about it.
So, and it could have been like Alabama. Alabama, after Saban retired, lost 25 players. This is a terrible time, in my opinion, with the free transfer portals and the money. It's bad combination. So, but that's not what we're getting at. But this is a completely different time than Buddy and I had when we got going in this business. Back then it was get a story, trust in everybody had trust in one another. I don't think, I know that coaches at Alabama do not trust the media, which they include everyone, primarily because of the bloggers and the internet people that have a different skin in the game, I guess, because of the competition. A lot more competition. In our day, you competed with the newspaper that was in your city if you had two papers in town, but basically we were all comrades and all in the same boat, making great friends. I knew, and we both did, people all over the conference and even across the country because of the nature of sports writing in those days.
I would hate, Rob, I'd hate to make it sound like sports writing just a hard drinking bunch of guys didn't work because you work your tail off.
You do.
78 hours a week, but there was some drinking going on. And there's some classic stories. I don't remember which two they were, but you knew them, Kirk, and I do too. Is that where one guy passed out at halftime? Now, I never saw a bottle in the press box. I'm sure it was there. This particular guy had imbibed a little before the game. He passed out. He wrote his first half running. You remember those days?
Oh, yeah.
And then he passed out, and his buddy picked it up, and he wrote the second half of a story and sent it in and didn't put his name on it. And his boss said, "That's the best story you've ever written, man." So many stories about things like that. But no, it was a hard-working bunch of people. You got to strap it on and be ready for a 12-hour day if you ever want the press box.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Just my experience is when you have been in a press box, and it's the camaraderie. It doesn't matter where you are. And Kirk, you've got friends, and Buddy, you do at all these different schools. And I think that's lost on some of the fans today. I am, as y'all know, I'm an Auburn graduate. I remarried. I got a Vol for life as a wife. My oldest daughter's an Alabama grad. Everybody else is Auburn.
I feel bad. I married a Seminole, so there you go.
Yeah, I mean, isn't that what makes it so much fun, Kirk, down here? Because you knew Coach Dye. You know, Dr. Waller May, he's one of my close friends, May Veterinary Clinic. They've been there for 60 years. I mean, you know, they have so many friends. Both of Waller's, sister-in-laws are Alabama grads and married to Auburn guys. That's what makes this so much fun. And the sports writers, to give y'all both a compliment. Again, you're the best guest because you're like a trial lawyer. You're like bringing F. Lee Bailey into the courtroom because you're prepared for any and every possible scenario. Kirk, when you just in writing that column the other night for Buddy, I don't know, I'm very coachable. I loved getting in here. He was going, look, now what you want to do is you want to break it down. But, man, how lucky am I and how lucky are we to have both of y'all on here together? Kirk, what advice do you give to young journalists, interns, or what have you? Because when I talked to Logan the other day, he just said, he goes, I love him. He goes, his son's the photographer. He goes, I love talking to Kirk's wife. You've got a lot of people that have built, you've got a loyal fan base, and that's not what you're in it for, but it's because, like Buddy said, y'all work so damn hard, and we're lucky for it.
Well, I don't want to be the be-all, end-all when I'm talking to young journalists. If I can help them, I'm more than happy to do it, particularly those that I've worked with, either when I had Bama Magazine or since working for various internet sites. And what I will, if they ask primarily, sometimes I'll suggest maybe, and it's just look at things that you're doing and think, now, could that have been done any other way? Where are we in, what story are you trying to tell? What information are you trying to impart? Those things are, can get lost on the internet, where you can, you're just typing kind of. So I think, again, I'm not the journalism teacher to these people, but if they think that, my years could be helpful to them, I'm more than happy to oblige. And that's with not just people that work with me or in the past for me, but, again, I'm still friends. Just because somebody works for somebody else doesn't mean we can't be friends, which we are.
Correct. Yeah. Buddy, your similar experience?
Yeah, I was going to ask Kirk. I know I'm proudest of the young people, and I hope I've helped people along the way. That's what I tried to do. To me, the greatest joy I've ever gotten is not out of anything I've ever won, it's a trophy or award or whatever, but is to see a young person that came in with zero talent and experience come in. Not that I necessarily taught them. All I did was gave them a chance to do what they do and then help them when they needed help. And to see the people who have been so amazingly successful. I had one guy, I was working in Ocala, Florida, as a one-man band. I had no help. And the guy came in one day in a grease monkey suit and had oil under his nails. And the young guy, he sat down and he said, "Can I watch you?" I said, "Sure." I'm putting the paper out. Remember those days when you put the paper out, you publish, you draw lines. And he's watching. His name was Jim, and he wanted to be a sports editor at one day. And he watched. I said, "All right, you can come in here and watch every day if you want to. It's fine. Just do my thing." And I made him a copy boy. Take this head back, take that head back, whatever. Probably about 6 to 8 weeks, he said, "I think I'd like to try that." I said, "Well, if you're willing to do it, I have 2 rules. Show up and do what you say you're going to do. That's all." And so he started doing that. He was a terrible speller. Couldn't spell cap. Just bought him the CNEA. Sorry, Terry. And he's my friend. I can do that to him. So anyway, this guy's name was Jim Hicks. And Jim Hicks one day said to me, "I can do that." Okay. I'm going to be away at the ball game this weekend. Let's see what you can do. I'm going to leave it to you. He did it. It wasn't great, but he did it. And he got a taste of it. How he got to town was he got out of the Navy and took the wrong bus to Ocala. That's how he got there. This guy wound up as being news editor of the Nashville Banner. Okay?
Wow.
Nashville Banner. As you know, back in the day, that was right back. But one example, who is the one person that you feel that you had like that you helped to get jump started? And you don't take credit for the success, nor why, but give me a helping hand. Who do you have, Kirk, like that?
Well, I had one little advantage in some respects is when I started Bama Magazine, I was involved in business with a guy in Kansas City, and we decided that we would go ahead and try for some others. So I hired a guy named Dave Sturt, who I suspect you know, who had
started getting bait.
He had to go Gators for us, and then moved it into Gator Bait. Mark Murphy at Auburn, I hired him, and he did the Auburn magazine, and was with them until he's already retired. I hired him that makes me feel old. But so and the way I did the Auburn magazine was Pat Dye called me. We'd been friends and stayed friends forever. When he was at Alabama, and he wanted an Auburn magazine like I had at Alabama. So of the people who worked for me over the years, they've got some of them have stayed in sports writing or did stay, and others moved on to other things. I have one guy who worked for me who was a great writer, great reporter, great person, and he's now a diplomat. He went into finished law. He already had a master's degree when I hired him. He went and got a law degree, joined the diplomatic corps, and is now a diplomat. So
you had a higher quality person. You didn't have any
quality person. That's right.
Working for you like I did. But anyway,
well, that's the cool thing. I can remember how many times you pulled something off a typewriter as a student in college. David Housel was sports editor emeritus of the Auburn Plainsman. I don't care if it took 1,000 times, do it and do it right. And he got colorful sometimes. And man, but and Buddy Davidson, you learned that there's nothing short of doing it right. And both of y'all, and I think about this, Buddy, the players and covering a game. We had Rick Cleveland on the show Friday. Great sports writer for the Jackson Clarion Ledger, now Mississippi Today. And it just, the longer the show went on, the better his stories were. And he said he started writing for the Hattiesburg American as a 13-year-old kid. I mean, I go back, my dad's 96, and he'll talk about, I had 3 jobs in high school, boy, and I was playing football, running track, swimming. I mean, and we didn't have air conditioning either. So, I mean,
you're just a lollygager. What can I say?
Yeah. But there's a lot to be gained from this. Y'all, I want y'all to talk about some of the best interviews that you had, press conferences and stuff like that, and the importance of what's off the record and on the record, and trust. How that is everything in life.
How long is this show?
Yeah, I was going to say.
Not that long, but just long enough.
Let me start by telling one on me. This is not necessarily an interview, but and Kirk, you know this. When you write a column, there's some people aren't going to like it. Just that's the way it is. We have to live with that reality. Like when you're a politician, half the people aren't going to like you. But I had a thing when I was working in New York my first time in Westchester. Before I went to the Daily News, I was working in a group of papers, Gannett in Westchester. And where golf is huge in Westchester County, big. And the Westchester Open at one point was a huge tournament. And so that was our baby. And I was a local columnist and a Gannett columnist as well. And so I was writing a column about that year's tournament. Now I can hear some of my friends that say, "Oh no, buddy, not golf again." I'm sorry. This happens to be a good story. This happened because the year, at one time, New York was the showcase event because the PGA Tour wanted to get in that New York market, and this was their opportunity. And the biggest and best of everybody was coming to New York. I happened to make a good friend, and George Burns who was not the comedian, it was a player. And in 1 year, we didn't get a lot of good players. And I was talking to him about it, and what is going? He said, "Well, guys don't like coming here. Some don't like New York. They don't like New Yorkers or whatever. And they'll come in, they'll kind of grudgingly come in, get up in the morning, go to the clubhouse, get breakfast, and be grudgingly hang around and whatever." And he said, one of them has been Crenshaw, who was a very popular guy. He had not won his first Masters yet. So I wrote a column, all right? And I said, just what I told you. This is the showcase, the media showcase back then, New York City. This is their premier event in New York. They ought to have the good players. The really good players ought to come here, which they used to do. And this year we don't have Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer, about 4 guys like that. And I said, while Ben Crenshaw is a fine player, he's no Jack Nicklaus. Okay. So anyway, I wrote that column, and I had a lot of background from this other player. I couldn't use his name. I'm sitting in the press box in the area, and I'm working on a Wednesday or Thursday. I look up, and Crenshaw's standing at the doorway with a newspaper in his hand, blowing smoke out of his nostrils. Where is this Buddy Martin? My good friend says, he's over there. Thank you. Yeah, man, go ahead. So he came over to me. He was really ripping mad. He chewed me a new one. And you remember Herbert Warren Wynn, who was a famous golf writer for Sports Illustrated, etc. Anyway, so Ben starts on it. Where do you come off writing this stuff? Where'd you get this from? I said, Ben, I got good sources. Well, there must not be good sources because you got it wrong. Okay, well, that's what you think. This is what I think. I'm sticking by what I said. Guys like you drive me crazy. I mean, he just ripped into me, and said, oh, no. And I just took the bowl, took the blow, and he kept saying, I need to know who told you. No, Ben, I'm not going to tell you who told me, okay? So, I mean, he gave me some shots. I stood there and took the bullets. And at the end, I got to give him credit for a great line. He held that paper from me. He says, well, I may not be Jack Nicklaus, but you're sure as hell know Herbert Warren Wynn. So, and later I made up with Ben and got to know him and talk to him and whatever. It was fine. But talk about your experiences, Kirk. You've had people come at you saying, what were you doing ripping Alabama? Or how come you didn't take up for Auburn?
Yeah, I don't. I'm not sure I can just grab one out. I worked for Coach Browne for 9 years, so that was
wow. That's amazing.
Part of my job was to meet with him every day, after every practice, after every game,
there's
and a lot of other times.
That's a book right there.
There's a trilogy of books. Kirk, let her rip. I want to hear this.
Everybody says that's a book, and pardon me. I can say this. Those 9 years, I could not wait to wake up every morning and go to work.
Wow.
And we had long hours because Coach Browne worked long hours, and you didn't want to ever disappoint him if you worked for him. None of us did. And so it was an experience. It was one that I knew that I had to, be at my best every day, which I tried to be. Of course, we all do. And I guess I remember things like that were not like Buddy's experience, but I just remember certain conversations with him.
Like what?
And I'll give you an example. It was in the spring one year, and it had not been a good practice on a Thursday. Well, back in those days, Alabama would scrimmage in the spring on Saturdays in the stadium. The gates were just open. Anybody could walk in and watch. But Coach Browne was not happy and announced that Saturday's scrimmage was closed to everyone. Well, that sent us scrambling. I had to call, the only way to get them back then was call the sports writers who ordinarily would be coming to cover and tell them I'd send them something afterwards, but they couldn't come. The coaches, they had their car dealers, and back then, alumni could help recruit. So they had all sorts of people they had invited, and they had to get in touch with them. So the practice was held, the scrimmage was held with no one in the stadium. And afterwards, I'd always meet Coach Browne around the end zone to get notes after practices and to send out. And when he walked up, he said, well, where are the writers? That's about all they covered back then, were newspaper reporters. And I said, well, Coach, you told me it was closed to everyone, so I called them and told them not to come. He said, well, I didn't mean the reporters. They're our friends. So can you imagine a coach today saying, oh, the writers are my friends?
Because they say media and that with everybody who had a Twitter account. So that's what that is. That's a great story, Kirk.
That is solid gold. Kirk, Jackie Sherrills comes on our show a lot, and he told a story one time. I was doing it in Tuscaloosa at Waller and Susan May's house a couple of years ago. And it was so neat to hear this. He said, Coach Bryant had a routine. He was big on routine. He said he'd be up at 4 every morning. 5:00, he had breakfast at the Holiday Inn on Highway 82, McFarland Boulevard. And at 6 o'clock, he's in that office and he's working. And at 11 o'clock, 11 to 12, he was in the stock market. 12 o'clock, he might sneak off down to Archibald's or somewhere for lunch. And he'd come back about 3:15. He'd be out there, practice at 3:30. And if he was singing something like, "We shall gather down by the river," it was going to be a long, hard-ass practice. And he just went on and on about it. And he said, but he just knew the players. He knew how to motivate people, but he could read the room. And again, you got to be around him. He was a big guy, bigger than life.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't think I've ever heard in modern times, "Where are the writers? They're our friends." That's special, Kirk. But I'm gonna let y'all take it. Just keep going.
Well, I've got another good post-practice story, a spring story. It was in the spring of 1973, and in a minute you'll know why. I know exactly it was in 73, and they'd had a scrimmage at the stadium, and I had been there, as always, to get the notes from him afterwards, and he walked over, and I could tell it, he would think, and I always watched his eyes, and I knew he was rehearsing everything on how it was going to look when it came out. And so he started off, he said, "We couldn't have beaten a Cal College today." Well, he had used that Cal College remark the previous August. Yeah. And then that was the year that Auburn blocked 2 punts and beat Alabama 70-16. And they gave a lot of credit to Coach Bryant having called him a Cal College.
Yeah.
So he had told me we couldn't have beaten a Cal College today. And he took a puff on that Chesterfield, thought a minute. He said, "Change that to Barber College."
That's awesome.
We had a near-death experience in Auburn with the Travelers in '66, and we had an old DC 6 or something.
3, I think, yeah.
People and we've been around about 6 or 7 of the schools. We were flying into Auburn. Our pilots were usually found at the bar the night before, and usually sometimes came to the plane wondering if they were even sober. And so it was quite an experience. And so we were landing at Auburn. And I don't know how it is now. I can't remember. But back then, it was just like a little runway with a bunch of trees. And we got down, getting ready to touch down, and you heard the pilot pull it up. He pulled it, trying to pull that thing up, Look out the window. Raymond Johnson from the Nashville, Tennessee, was grabbing his pillow and holding it. And it was scary, And so we pulled up just in time. And some people say that we clipped the tree on the way up. I don't know. And we circled and came back around and landed. I think, who was the SID then? He was on the ground.
Might have been Buddy Davidson.
Buddy Davidson. That's who it was. He was on the ground and thought we just scared to death. Of course, we got off immediately because we were all soiled, and it was like, it was a scary moment. Somebody said, "Well, what happened?" I said, "Well, there's a cow on the runway." At the Cow College, right? So
God!
Every year after that, we landed there, and Jack Harston started the routine the next year. He got the PA, and he got a harmonica, and he played "Nearer My God to Thee." The Titanic song, as you know. God. So that was one of many things happened there. But one more thing about Coach Bryant. You can't imagine how big Coach Bryant was. You do. You guys know. And you can imagine, you think Nick Saban's big. He is, but he wasn't like Bear Bryant. Bear Bryant was Godzilla. He was amazing. Yeah. If you just you'd say, "Cover your eyes," there he is, But he was an amazing guy. And the first time I ever saw him in my life, Kirk, you'll like this story. They didn't have ACC media days. They come down to Silver Springs, all the coaches, and they would go to the Holiday Inn, and they go fishing every day, and they drink some whiskey and smoke some cigarettes and play cards and whatever. And that was their coaches' meetings, what they did. So I was there in Ocala at the time. This would be 63. And I went out there, every year and tried to go. I went out there and the hospitality room. There weren't many, a couple of coaches around. There was a card game going on, nickel and dime, whatever it was, and Mary Harmon Browne was playing. She was there, and it was Alf Van Hoos and me and a couple of people. Just and just not a big deal, but we're just having fun. And we were playing for about an hour or so, and suddenly in the doorway appeared this giant of a man with no shoes on, smoking a Chesterfield, and stood there and waved to Mary Harmon. And she waved to him. And I looked at him. I thought, now that is a man right there. And I didn't get a chance to hold on. No. So we had we had the evening to talk about it. I wrote a column that night about the real boss of Alabama football, Mary Harmon Browne. Won one of my first awards with it, But that's the kind of access we had then, Kirk. You had an unbelievable experience for 9 years to have been around this guy. No. So I keep getting a call. I'm sorry. So I would say it'd be hard for you, as much as I respect and admire what was happening in Alabama and the GOAT. I can't let go of Coach Browne as the greatest of all time.
I'm with you. He's, I would like to have a team that Saban recruited and Coach Bryant coached. That'd be pretty good. Yeah. I want to go to Jack Harston real quick. Of course, he was a funny guy, and on the Skywriters tour, he was the guy for humor. And when they came, I was sports information director when he the Skywriters came to Alabama on one of the last trips before they ended that. And they were staying overnight in Tuscaloosa, which meant we had a dinner for the cocktail party dinner, and then Coach Bryant was going to come in later and answer questions and give a preview and all that. And so Harston, of course, he was funny. He had he was addicted to cigarettes just like Coach Bryant, so he had that same gravelly voice. And so he decides to give a preview of what Coach Bryant's going to say. And I remember that he sort of ended it with, "We won't win a game, not even the Sugar Bowl." And then after Coach Bryant came in, they asked him about, it was late in his career, about retirement. He said he didn't have any plans to retire. Then casually mentioned that the university had offered him a lifetime contract, which he had declined. And Harston said, "What? You wanted longer?" So he was a funny guy, and that was again, you would have that kind of repartee with a coach, and it was normal, really. So I would say that I think yesteryear was better in a lot of ways, but we have to move on, and that's what we've done.
Well, I mean, the main thing is that it's these people that we knew and that we know and that we're going to get to know. But I'm with both of y'all. You think about Stillwaters. Coach Dye having everybody up there, man, for 2 or 3 days of playing cards and having some drinks and smoking cigarettes and cigars and just telling stories. But, I mean, it's kind of like if you had 5 guys lost in the wilderness for a week, they come out of that being close friends for the rest of their lives and get together every year to have a reunion party. That's what we love, and that's what we love to hear about, is what it takes to make great teams. A Nick Saban recruited team with Coach Bryant coaching them. I mean, you knew how to coach them, and you think about that and all. We're going to have to do this again.
No.
These stories are, Kirk, you're a great writer. Buddy, you're a great writer. It would be cool to have a coffee table book with the best stories from the great writers like both of y'all. I have so much respect for you, because as a kid, I'd go to the Tobacco Corner newsroom at Poplar and Mendenhall Sunday morning and get half a dozen newspapers just to read them. And I thank God I did and still do, because it's like lifting weights with your brain. It just makes that muscle stronger. Parting comments for both of y'all, and how people can keep up with all the great work that you're doing. And we're blessed to have both of you share your time with us on SECU podcast. And this is not work. This is nothing but fun.
Well, you want me to start? I'll go ahead. You mentioned the golf outings that coaches used to have. I know Coach Bryant was, I think, the first with the Bear Bryant Golf Classic. Sports writers from all over the South, a few bowl people and a few, like that. And I was a very young sports writer working at the Birmingham Post-Herald, but circumstances had put me with Bill Lumpkin as the two people covering Alabama and Auburn. And I got invited that year to the Bear Bryant Golf Classic. Here I am, a young guy, the night of the man landing on the moon, and Coach Bryant was excited about that. And I sat on a sofa in his cabin at Lake Martin. He sat on the other end. Nobody sat between us, and we watched the man land on the moon together. So I always win the story of where were you when the man landed on the moon. But it was a great time. And I went to one of a couple of guys at Stillwater's, and he had me come up to his room and talk for a long, long time about different things, including, let's make the Alabama-Auburn rivalry good, not bad. Let's end the dissension. I said, I'm all for it, but you got to get rid of Feinbaum. So,
yeah. Well, I'm going to end this by saying, first of all, it was a pleasure and honor to be on with you, Kirk.
Oh, man.
You've done over the years, your body of work, and the fact that listen, I have a lot of friends who are younger than me who are having problems just being able to remember what they had for breakfast. And I can remember that. That's not a problem. And I'm blessed that you are too. Your mind's obviously very sharp. I'm bolder than you are. But anyway, I'm so honored to be able to come on here and talk to someone who understands the role of the newspapers, what it used to be like. I don't want to live yesterday. I'm not trying to do that. But 20 years it's killed newspapers. And I'm sad for that because I'm a lifetime journalist. My dad was, and my kids all majored in journalism. But we keep the home fires burning and we keep the conversations going on. The stories still live. And I'm going to end this conversation on my part with a joke told to me by the great Alf Van Hoos about Coach Bryant. And you might remember this, something similar to it. And I'm remembering a lot of years ago, Alf told me this story. It was old when he told me. And back in the day, when Coach Bryant, he said, would go back in his office, put his feet up on his table and put his hat over his eyes, whatever he did before a game. He said there was always officials would come in before the game and say, I'm just checking with the coach, see if there are any unusual formations, what I need to be attending, the usual thing that they did back in those days. And I'm thinking this might have been in the late 60s. I don't know for sure. And so Alf told the story about there was a guy named Billy Tease, played for Georgia Tech, a small running back. And he was so anxious to say he got to go in and talk to Coach Bryant. Now, you remember, Kirk, that back in the day when Bear had those little teams, a lot of little guys, right? They're not big, massive guys, they're little guys, fast guys. And so Billy Tease just had a great deal of respect for him. So Billy Tease, came back in the bag and said, Coach Bryant, Billy Tease, I'll be your whatever you want, back judge today. Just checking to see if there's anything I need to know about any special formations. And he said, Coach Bryant said, no, shut up like that, whatever. And Tease says, I'm in the presence of the great Bear Bryant. I just can't walk out. I got to say something. So he said, Coach Bryant, I just want to tell you the great respect I have for you as a coach. And I particularly love that you take small ball players like you do, and you were able to do a terrific job with small guys. And I just love how you do it. And Ryan said, "Oh, thanks very much. Appreciate that, shucks." And T said, I felt like I had to say something else. So he said, yeah, I'm serious. I'm coach. I'm serious. I think you could take a 5'8" guy and teach him how to guard Wilt Chamberlain. And Brian kind of laughed at it, whatever. So T's left the locker room. He described as walking through the players all sitting in groups where their hair is combed, all gussied up and looking ready to go. And he said, Bryant's walking out. And he said, T's is walking out. And he feels a tap on his shoulder. Looks around at Coach Bryant and says, but that ain't to say the big SOB can't be guarded, though.
God. Hey, I got to tell you, again, so much fun. And I say this a lot when you get a group of really special people together. And I'd heard so much about you, Kirk, over the years. I've seen you everywhere. Mark Murphy's a friend of mine, and I know what he thinks of you and the respect. And that's something, whenever I've taken my kids around people, like we were at Coach Dye's house. We got to go over there with a friend of mine's niece was one of his interns the night before Kick 6. We spent about an hour with him out at the treehouse out at the lake in Notasulga at Crooked Oaks. And I said, don't talk about Georgia. He played there, All-American. Don't talk about Coach Bryant. Loved him like a father. Just listen. And you go in there right by the phone in the kitchen on the wall was that picture of him and Coach Bryant before the game in 81 or 82. That's what you can get on TV and call in and spew all you want about all these other schools. But I got friends at every damn one of them. And I love my school, and I get as excited as the fans do of all those other schools, and so do y'all. And I think anybody watching this podcast, if you don't watch this and walk away saying, this is how you treat people and treat them this way, you'll have a great life. So for both of y'all, man, awesome. It's like, again, getting Led Zeppelin together. I got Jimmy Page, John Paul Jones. Where's Robert Plant? But y'all are both, this is special. Thank you.
Hey, Rob, if I could get, Buddy said something that reminded me of that Billy T story. Late in his career, of course, Coach Bryant was going for the all-time record, which at the time was 314 wins.
Yep.
And at Penn State that year, that was going for 314, which he got. He'd get 315 against Auburn the next week. But against Penn State, up there, it was tough because the officials, Penn State wasn't in a league. They had their own officials. And so as the game at Alabama was comfortably winning the game late, and one of the officials came over and said, Coach Bryant, I just want you to know that it's a supreme honor for me to have officiated in this historic game. And Coach Bryant said, well, I just want you to know that I don't think I've ever got a worse screwing, and he wasn't that polite.
Holy shnikes.
One more thing. I have a lot of friends who went to Auburn, go to Auburn, whatever. I wish we had the Auburn-Florida game back. It was a wonderful game.
Yep.
Auburn owned us for so many years, but I go back to John Reeves throwing 9 interceptions that day. And linebacker Billy, your friend,
Bill Cody.
Bill Cody.
Dave's older brother. Yeah.
Yeah, and back in those days, and I remember Gusty year out taking the ball off the shoulder of somebody going racing. Just somebody.
Gusty and I grew up together.
Really?
God.
His name, Gusty year out, one of the great names.
Oh yeah.
Over here, I got a big painting likeness of the kick, Spurrier's kick that won him the Heisman Trophy to beat Auburn. I mean, so many great moments in Auburn, Florida, and probably the nicest fans in the SEC to me were the Auburn fans.
Yeah,
Gusty, is well known in Alabama because on Kenny Stabler's Run in the Mud, Dennis Dixon was blocking on Gusty, and from the Auburn side, it looked like a hold. Probably from the Alabama side too, but in any event, Gusty and I were at a cocktail party a few years ago, and we are friends still. And in a little group of people, I said, Gusty, if Dennis Dixon hadn't held you, nobody'd know who the hell you were. It was not true, of course. Gusty was a great player.
Oh,
He took it in great spirit, like he is a great guy, a great friend.
We got to do this
and
again
that's
someday, Rob. We got to do this again someday.
oh yeah,
See, we can't stop. This could go on forever, and I knew it when you asked me about it. I said, we will go forever.
It's like eating one potato. So what was that thing where you can't eat one Frito or something? That's
yeah, you can't, because I mean, again, both of y'all. I remember as a kid in '75, I think it was. Dad left Destin for about a day and a half. Flew to Tuscaloosa to meet with Coach Bryant and Sam Bailey. Dad's an architect. They needed a track and field complex and a tennis deal. And I said, "Did you see the bear?" And he goes, "Yeah." I go, "What was he doing?" He goes, "Well, he was coming out of the bathroom when I was going in." And I go, "What did he say?" He goes, yeah. He goes, "How was that meeting with him?" He said, "He just listened." And Sam Bailey took a lot of notes. And it's funny to ask Coach Dye years later, "Did you know Coach Bailey?" He goes, "He's a good friend of mine." And that's what is so cool, is how interconnected we are. It reminds you to be respectful of your rivals, always show class and character, and think about how you act. But man, yeah, we got to do this again. We're going to get everybody up on the stage at the Ryman here pretty soon, because y'all are that good.
One more thing, I want to know how to get Kirk stuff. I want to tell folks we're on the show live at 9:00 Central Eastern time, 4 nights a week. If you hurry, you can get this guy Rob on there one night. We got great guests. I always say Buddy Martin show, it's a mediocre host but great guests. We have fabulous, and so we do publish our Gator Bait. We have a daily site, GatorBaitMedia.com. You can join if you like, and it's different than what it was when Dave Stern owned it. One of these days we might even have it in a printed magazine again. That would be great. But it's a pleasure to be on with you today.
Yeah, Kirk, let them know how they can follow you. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, Bama. I'm part of the Alabama affiliate of 24/7 Sports, Bama247.com, and I've got a 4-part series up for anybody that's interested in what we've been talking about, because I went back and did all of that. It's up there on the site right now.
On Bama247.
On Bama247.com.
Absolutely. All right. Hey, what an honor. Thank you both, man. Appreciate everybody watching. This brought to you by May Veterinary Clinic in Tuscaloosa since 1964, Dr. Wayne May. Till tomorrow, man. Have a great one. We're out of here.